Did I hear my name? This is Kristen. I'm here.
Yes, thank you. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our May meeting of the Cal Shaw's JPA. I'm Marla Stewart, the Director at Contra Costa County and the Vice Chair of the JPA. And so today I am chairing the meeting because Michael Sylvester is not here today, not available today. So I'm going to rely on Julia and Jen to help me out to get through the meeting, and any of you can help me. But no, thank you for that. We also have two other alternates here today. Deborah Martinez is here on behalf of Francina Martinez, and Rachel Pina is here on behalf of Ethan Dye. So 3 alternates in the meeting today. Thank you, all 3 of you, for being here. We do have a quorum. We have a lot of items on the agenda today, which I appreciate. Lots of good updates about things that are happening, especially like good updates related to HR1, which I appreciate. So now, before we move into our first item, this is an opportunity for the public to speak on any item that is not on the agenda. Public comments throughout the meeting today are limited to no more than 3 minutes per speaker, except that a speaker using the translator should be allowed up to 6 minutes. So, and the public will be available to speak on any agenda item after it's been read. So item by item is available to the public as well. This is an opportunity for anybody who has anything they want to say that is related to something not on the agenda.
Let's review the agenda.
Oh, okay. I do have a script in front of me and it does say review the agenda. Just in my defense, it says sometimes Mike goes through the agenda. Skipped it. Okay. All right. We have our agenda today is we do have the consent items. Which will be good, and there's a nice, good long list of consent items today. We are also, before the consent items, approving our project budget today. And then the informational items, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 informational items that we'll go through. Okay, thank you. Okay, this is an opportunity for the public. If anybody has anything to speak to, it's not on the agenda. Hearing and seeing none, we will move on. Thank you. So the next thing on our agenda is item number 4, which is approving our project budget. And I'm going to turn it over to Holly for this.
Thank you, Marla. Holly Murphy, Chief Administrative Officer. So for background here, before we put this forward for action, prior to the start of each new fiscal year, we do ask, our fiscal agent asks that we secure approval from the board for a combined project budget, which is today's action. So this first slide provides references from our JPA agreement, the MOU, the bylaws that specify that the board must adopt an annual budget referring to our JPA administrative budget, which was first presented to the members in January, and it was approved back in January. So our next slide identifies the categories that are now included in the project budget in addition to the administrative budget. So it includes our baseline, which is our last approved operational advanced planning document update, or OAPDU. And that's for all of our CalSAWS maintenance and operations, the costs. We also include county purchases, and those are included because of the transactions for those run through our JPA fiscal agent. And then we include premise for various policy changes that are above and beyond the baseline. And then our next slide provides the totals by funding source. Each premise item is listed separately there, along with the baseline budget and the county purchase estimate. This list does align to our spring budget request that can and does evolve through the May revise and again as part of January governor's budget. The good news is we did verify yesterday with the release of the May revise that we are in alignment. There are a couple of minor variances that we're working through with the state, but that was good news that we were in alignment with the May revise. So this view also provides the breakdown between the expenditure categories, including services and supplies versus capital outlay. And the capital is about certain enhancements and hardware that exceed thresholds established by San Bernardino Auditor Controller. And the combined total is $474.3 million. That is less than last year. Last year was $519 million. And that's primarily due to the completion of our major infrastructure and M&E transitions. So with that, I'll hand it back to Marla for comments, questions.
Thanks very much, Holly. I have one question and then I'll open it up to board members for any other questions. I really appreciate the detail of the budget here and I appreciate seeing all the projects that we have happening this year. Great. I'm wondering about funding for ROI. And if that's here yet, if it's in current year.
It is in the budget year.
Thank you very much. Opening it now for any other board members who have any questions or comments on this item. Hearing and seeing none, I will open it up to the public for any public comment on this item. Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'm looking for a motion in a second from the board related to this item.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you. A second. Who seconded? I do. Thank you. That was Veronica Deborah. Thank you very much. Yes.
Veronica? That one? Kristen?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Contreras?
Yes.
Leo?
Yes.
Okay. Veronica, did you come back? That's it.
Motion carries. Okay, thanks very much. Let's go on to the next item, which is item 5. This is our consent agenda, and I'll turn it over again to Holly.
Thank you, Marla. So we have 8 items on the consent calendar today. 6 of those are contract items. The first is the approval of the minutes and review of action items from the prior meeting. And for those action items, we've got quarterly financial updates that is on the agenda today. We have monthly updates for analytics and infrastructure. That's part of the agenda today. Performance reports are attached as information to the board package. And then the other action items are accounted for within the agenda today, except for one. That one is action item number 18. That was related to a request last month to add an exempt county to ensure we validate the HR1 ABOT enhancements against exempt counties. The team did confirm, Roger confirmed that this is already being addressed and will continue to be addressed through the release and validation process for the targeted releases that are upcoming. Next item on the calendar is an approval of an update to the FSED Governance Board. The Riverside Director Charity Douglas is stepping down due to scheduling conflicts, and the request is to approve Gilbert Ramos for that position. Next is an MOU. This is for exchanging data between the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, Correctional Healthcare Services as part of transitional case management. So this MOU establishes the framework, collaborative framework between the parties for that secure exchange. Next item is ClearBest Change Order 10. So this change order will replenish the change allowance by adding $6 million for the remaining term of the agreement, which is through January 2027. So those funds are used for the various work orders that we bring back to the board for approval. This change order also incorporates two additional optional months subject to future board approval should we need them for a cost of $920,986. So the total contract value is increased by the combined total of $6.9 million. That brings the total contract value to $62.5 million. But again, incremental updates are brought back to the board for future approval based on today's consent. Next item is Deloitte Portal Mobile Amendment 2. This aligns the agreement to the Benefits Cal transition period, which ends July 31st. So this is adding 2 additional months for maintenance and operations. The cost for that is $1.3 million for that 2-month extension. We did also account for 2 additional optional months, just in case. And that has another $1.2 million subject to future board approval as well. The cost is offset through a reduction to the change allowance, so there's no actual overall change to the total contract value for this amendment. The next is Deloitte Portal Mobile Work Order 23. So this is also for Benefits Cal, and this is part 2 of the transition work. And it includes the transition specific hours through the end of July. We also included some software renewals that need to be executed prior to the end of transition. The cost equates just over $619,000. Approval of the work order will leave a balance of $14.9 million in that change allowance. So again, no overall change to the total contract value for this item. Next item is Deloitte M&E Change Order 9. So now we're switching over to the M&E side. This includes a county purchase for Contra Costa that's related to GAGR. The cost is $40,900. That leaves a balance of $18.1 million for future county purchases, and the costs are funded through county dollars. Last but not least, we have an amendment to our legal services agreement for your consideration today. This amendment too will extend the agreement for 2 years with no change to existing rates during that 2-year period. The amendment will also enable future extensions for up to 4 additional 1-year options with modest rate increases. The optional years would be brought back to the board for future approval and consideration. And for background on this one, after some discussion with our board chair and vice chair last month, we determined that given the amount of change, particularly related to HR1, that some consistency with our legal counsel would be prudent. So based on that guidance, we negotiated with Chronic to extend the agreement, and we took action to cancel the procurement that we had opened. The procurement's not required. It was based on standard practice, and we can revisit that in the future. In the meantime, David Tyrer will continue as our primary legal counsel with various support that we have today as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Marla.
Thank you, Holly. So thank you, Julia, for the responsiveness from the action items last night. Really appreciate that they're on the agenda today. I'm looking forward to hearing those. And I also appreciate the flexibility of our partner vendors with these changes. Things do change constantly, and so appreciate your reactiveness to changes. And Holly, to you and your team for contracting. With that, do any other JPA members have any questions or comments on these action items, the consent calendar? None in the room and seeing none online, I'll move it to public comment. Is there any member of the public who has any comments on the consent? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the, what do you say? A motion. I'll call for a motion.
I'll motion to approve the consent items.
I'll second.
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
Veronica, I saw you join.
Did I hear my name?
Yes, Veronica.
Yes.
Is that yes to the consent
That's a yes.
items or yes, you're correct? Okay. Kristen,
Yes.
Dr. Contreras,
Yes.
and Rogelio.
Yes.
So the consent items carried. So now we'll go into our informational items. This is starting with item 6. CalSAW's project risk overview. This is something that we've asked for as a JPA, so we appreciate that it's here. We can have a chance to look at this. Turning it over to Holly Murphy and Wendy Batterman to cover this item.
Okay, thanks, Marla. I'll start and then hand it to Wendy. We'll do a little tag teaming here. So again, as Marla mentioned, there were several requests last month for additional information about the risks. You asked about CARES risks. You asked about what keeps you awake at night, and that may or may not be a risk. So to that end, we wanted to provide an overview of how we manage issues and risks. And this is to establish a foundation as we progress through the agenda today, where you're going to see we've included risks within the topics. We've embedded them within the agenda item. So with that, I'll have Wendy start with some details of our standard practices.
Thank you, everybody. So as Holly said, we've included a new form that you'll see throughout the presentation today. And it's a summary of risk and watch items associated to each informational item. And as we were going to continue to evolve this presentation. So as you see something that you may need more or less information, we're going to continue to adjust over the next few months. But just want to ground everybody in some industry standards in terminology. And we know that we're all more than familiar with risk and issues. That's why we've actually brought this topic back today. But because we're at a new category for discussion, we want to ground ourselves in, again, the industry definitions and just provide a quick refresher on what each of these are. So from left to right, we're really talking about, we are adding watch item as a category that we want to talk about on a regular basis. We actually have some of these inside of the project working on, but we want to raise these up for the board as well. So watch item, as Holly was saying, is really those things that keep you up at night. These are concerns and maybe pre-risk. These are items that have not reached maturity level yet to be able to have defined impacts or likelihoods of happening or consequences. So for example, there may be some concern about union engagement or an alignment of accounting process. Those may be concerns at this point. We'll watch them and they may turn into a risk, but there may not be enough information to actually take into the risk level and actually have them defined very clearly. So as we know, a risk is an uncertain future event that, if it occurs, could impact some of the project objectives such as scope, cost, quality, and schedule. Issues, of course, are things that have already happened and are actively impacting the project's objectives. Next slide. So we've provided here today just a refresher of graphics to talk about how risk issues are prioritized. these risk and issues, how we determine red, green, and yellow. Sometimes when a risk is raised, it may feel like we need a different color or different priority. However, from the project standpoint, we really use math to determine what the probability and the risk level or risk exposure is. So it's probability that a risk will happen and the impact that could have multiplied by the impact of if that risk actually happened. And so you can see in the chart what determines red, yellow, and green. The risk level, so the probability is from 10% to 9%, and the impact is from 1 being a minimal impact to 5 being unacceptable. And when you multiply these, you can see where a risk will fall along with for its risk level or exposure. And just like risk issues have priorities and are not, and of course not treated equally, just because something turns into an issue, either from a risk or it's just an issue right out the gate. It has its own priorities from low, minimal impacts, something as simple as a software project is now out of date. It can still be used or it's out of warranty and needs to be replaced within a certain period of time. Mediums and high are really looking at those milestone slippages and critical path slippages to determine whether it's medium or high. And then, of course, critical is something that could be pausing the project or really impacting production. With that, I'm going to turn it to Holly to talk about what our current risk and issues are.
Okay, thanks. So again, vetted the risks within the agenda topics, but we included the list here. So this first slide here, you'll see the risk number on the left of the page, the summary description in the next column, and then that risk level, which is, again, as Wendy said, based on probability and impact. That far right indicates the agenda item where we will be discussing the risks so that you'll get more context as it relates to that item. So all of the risks on this slide are covered later in the agenda. Now, on the next slide, these are our transition risks. And we do have one issue we're tracking. Now, we moved our transition topic to an appendix, so I will touch on these here today. So the first two risks here, these are related to availability of staff. We recognize the importance of ensuring our ongoing operations are not impacted as we conduct the transition activities in parallel. So the second risk there has a nuance related to offshore availability due to the time differences. And so for both of those, we've taken steps to mitigate through collaborative planning and scheduling and accommodating early and evening hours for sessions that involve the offshore staff. The third risk on the list is about providing existing documentation and granting access to tools, environments, assignment of licenses to the Accenture staff, and granting access and assignment of those licenses that may be currently in use is very complex. It has to be managed in a way that we don't interrupt the ongoing work being done by Deloitte. And this is mitigated through very clear documentation, very careful planning and scheduling of the reassignment of those access rights and licenses. And the Accenture team has a daily call with Deloitte and Gainwell to manage and track these activities so that we can avoid impact on the schedule. And so far, all of the documentation has been completed for that one at this time. The last risk is about a new SLAs within the Accenture agreement. So as compared to the current agreement, we strengthened the SLAs in the new agreement as part of that procurement process. And an example is instead of 98% of transactions at less than 2 seconds, we change it to 99%. We have additional SLAs around availability, notification, timeframes, and providing required artifacts for audits. We're not seeing any concerns so far as tests are being run against the new SLAs, so it's a low risk. But Accenture will continue to validate as changes are made to the benefits cal releases to make sure those changes can still meet the new SLA requirements. For the issue, we have, this is related to the staff availability risk. We do have an issue where we had a delay in working out the availability for some job shadow schedules. for the SCR work stream, and that's a critical work stream. However, there was no impact to the critical path. So we are still on track for completing within the 6-month period, but we are working through resolution in identifying some additional scheduling and working through those details, but still expected to complete that phase by the end of May. And with that, that takes us to end of that topic. And again, we'll be talking about the other risks as part of the agenda. So back to you, Marla.
Holly, great overview there. I appreciate having this on the agenda on a regular basis, and I look forward to the deeper dive in all of it. Do any board members have any questions or comments on this item? Not seeing or hearing any, open it up. Item. Seeing or hearing any. That's an informational item, so we don't need to vote there. Thank you. We're going on to the next item, item 7, which is our quarterly PMO update, and handing it back to Holly.
Okay, and this is my last one. So this is our ongoing, my favorite thing. This is our ongoing action item to provide the quarterly fiscal update. I have a few other items related to PMO in here today as well. This first slide is just our usual reminder of how the information is structured within the report. We have attached the report to your meeting package today, so we are just going to cover the highlights on the next slide. So since last February, when we did the last quarterly update, we have applied updates. We've aligned to the spring budget process where certain funds were shifted out. So you'll see changes in those totals since the last report. But based on those changes, we have just over 398 million currently allocated across all of our funding categories. We expect some savings in our premise area. As noted on the slide, there's about 466,000 in savings there. That was primarily related to wood tip, where Accenture and ClearBest costs were less than planned. And we are still finalizing our year-end estimates as we close out the fiscal year. We are already seeing a cost come in less than planned, so we are actually in really good shape. And again, that full report is attached to the board package. Our next slide is the budget risk. So this is an ongoing environmental risk we've been tracking at a high level, given various state and federal budget uncertainty. However, of course, as the May revise came out yesterday, we are in alignment, so that was good news. We're going to still track this at a high, maybe trending to a medium based on that, but we still have uncertainty at the federal level. But we mitigate this risk by working really closely with our state partners, our federal sponsors, and continuously monitoring our actual costs and projections and adequate planning for future funding requests. Next slide is related to procurement. And as mentioned earlier, we did cancel the legal procurement, so we can revisit that in the future. But for QA, I wanted to just share that we're on track with evaluations. We issued instructions for the best and final offer and in an addendum on May 11th. Responses are due back from bidders on June 1st, and then we're on target for vendor selection and notice of intent to award on July 24th. Okay, and then last but not least, I wanted to do an update. We did complete our annual financial audit, and I'm just going to lead with we have no findings. Everything was there was no findings. Everything was presented fairly, so we were very excited about that. So a shout out to my team on that, Girish Uppal and his staff, as well as our San Bernardino County fiscal agent, who we work very closely with, Juan, there, and he's been great to work with. So once again, we had a great audit. So these slides just give you the background and the requirements for that and how we go through that process. So I'll just keep that one short and hand that back to you, Marla.
Thank you, Holly. I do really appreciate the balanced budget and the spending to budget. And congratulations on a great audit finding. This fiscal work is often kind of in the background. We don't see it very much. But it's a critical part of our critical component of our accountability to the public, is to be fiscally accountable. So thanks for that. Any comments, or questions from my colleagues on the board? Good job.
Thank you.
Any comments, from the public? Seeing and hearing none, well, thank you again, Holly, for that, and move on to the next item. Next item, is our CalSAWS priorities, and I'll hand it over to Julie.
So this is just to bring this, kind of resurface this conversation, no decisions being found, obviously. But this is just to kind of reorient us about the conversation around prioritization. Even in recent conversations, we've been getting out from various directors, PSC and different forums on how CalSAWS does prioritization. Obviously, there's the overview, the standard where policy kind of writes the framework, for us, and then, after that, it's, some of the other county requests on enhancements, even with let's say opinion. That these are all things that need to be done, but there's policy pieces that are mandated and everything that make the county work experience, better. So we kind of started this back actually in January of 2025. When we presented the strategic objectives, defined them for the county's member representative groups chime in on recommendations, and then ultimately those top strategic objectives were kind of blessed by our board in April. And then we started to move forward with, okay, so how do we move things? How do we align the priorities that are being communicated that in the form of county enhancement requests? How do we get those through the funnel the most effectively? Because what we were doing historically was a little bit of a whack-a-mole where it was very transactional, one enhancement request at a time, but you would see some common threads through several of them. So I think it's more holistic approach to them. And so we started engaging with the counties, the PPOCs, huge shout out to the PPOCs who started engaging with us on how we could do the business chamber request and develop business cases around county needs that align with the strategic objectives that were identified by our member representatives and our board. So we started that work. And we also shared it out during the CalSAWS conference. We had a little guy coming through singing and dancing. That was our BCR guy. But then what happened was HR1, right? Right after the CalSAWS conference, HR1 was signed. And so we decided we needed to pause some of the execution on some more transformational work because we had our right then, right? And you guys presented those to us. And so what we decided to do, we said, we have these 5 areas that we need to focus on. We coordinated with the board, we aligned with that. And what we actually ended up doing was skipping to the right side of the new process and moving right to the work groups. And so the next slide. So when we talked about the change prioritization process, this was the right side of it. So once the board, the PSC had prioritized things, then we rolled up to the regions. It would be presented to the PSC. PSC has been fantastic as we've been still kind of behind the scenes working with them on what that voting or prioritization looks like. But then it was ultimately going to go to the JPA, and JPA was going to say yay or nay accepting those recommended priorities. So HR1 again being the theme for us, and so we developed those work groups that Roger and team have been talking about extensively, and they moved into this phase, right? And this is where you see the research and ideation, some of the design, testing, release. This is where the work groups were ultimately activated. And so what we got was a real-time opportunity to see, do these work groups actually help us move with the speed and velocity that constant uncertainty that we experience provide. And so we did that. We've been updating the board regularly on how those work groups have been moving through this process. And so we can move to the next. Right. But what we had was the functionality roadmap that kind of came out of this. And so this is kind of, if you think about where HR1 was signed, we identified in August those priorities, and then those work groups were activated around ad hoc reporting, data and analytics, how fresh processing, the air rate work group, AWOD, and then truth. And so those work groups moved through. Like I said, we've been working and providing updates on those and potential enhancements, and then we developed roadmaps for each of those work groups. So out of those work groups, it's not a big bang, right? So ABOT, using ABOT as an example, ABOT functionality, the priority was those things that needed to be developed so that we could be compliant with policy come June 1st. And then after that, each release have a sequence of prioritized enhancement that work group has worked together to prioritize in coordination, and that work group being county representatives and the project staff as well. So if we just zoom out now, this was the left side of that process. And so the life cycle, the vision of that life cycle was that we were going to roll it up, right? So the counties and regions would work together to identify the themes, the major pain points, and supporting the counties and moving forward in a strategic way. And then ultimately those would roll up from the counties and regions and land on the lap of the PSC, who would prioritize those things in a public setting, going through the different scoring. Marley, this would be very similar to the collaboration model. As everyone came together in one setting, had a great, that was an effective, fantastic meeting where county, state, and advocate groups came together and scored sessions on really where we need to focus. This is similar that, and then ultimately it goes to the JPA, and those boxes around as they see fit. So this is really just to. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the work group again, with Roger and Katie, but really this is just to reintroduce you all. We'll be talking about this in various forms. This comes with an app on where if there are areas in this process that the board would like for us to pivot or tweak so that we can start activating, something along these lines, because we know that the right side works. So we're on the left side, we need to make some, some changes so that we can make sure to keep the board in the loop, but that we're always aligning to those strategic objectives that our board and PSC are. And so this is just kind of a heads up, before we start engaging. Obviously, we won't be doing, any changes to the process today, but we will be coming to the board so that eventually, if we need to make any changes in terms of our documentation. And then hopefully we'll be moving forward with additional communication, working with the POCs to get feedback real time from the counties. We look forward to doing that probably in the fall or early summer.
Thanks, Julia. I think this was a very helpful summary of where we've been, where we're headed. So what I'm understanding here is this is kind of where we're headed. And the right side, the PSC, JPA, we're kind of there.
Yeah.
But the two columns on the left, still sort of shopping those around,
Yeah.
thinking about those. And, maybe finish that by fall, take a little pause because we've got HR1 stuff to take care of. And then this would be represented in revisions to the handbook that would come back eventually.
Yeah, so and that's a good point. So we already started revising and kind of what we see, because obviously the work group the handbook, David Tyler was also involved in it early last year as well. So what we wanted, we need feedback on where we need to make tweaks so that we can formalize it, and then again we would be bringing that document to the board.
I know one of the questions that I get, from time to time is related to the CER, DCR.
Yeah.
We kind of were making that transition from CER to DCR. So CER, just because we're in a public meeting here, CER. Thank you.
Council
Council Enhancement Request. That's what we had in the past. And the new one, the BCR, business case request,
Yeah.
is kind of a little bit of a revised policy going there. Where would you say we are in that transition right now?
Yeah, so what we did is, we started, introducing the VCR through the RN, have been coordinating really heavily with the region on these VCR. So we actually have, several kind of waiting that kind of that they started writing so that they could get some muscle memory around the VCR document. I think we got feedback on that, and that's what we're getting after, like, they're asking, like, hey, what are we on those VCRs that we developed so we can move forward with them, but we actually use those as well with the work groups, because some of them were related to the error rate, some of these other efficiencies, so the counties were able to still reference those documents in the process. But so right now they're not an edict that they have to use those, but that's been a very effective way for them to articulate common themes.
And then the other layer.
Did you
Because
say anything?
if I could add,
Yeah.
so CERs was an all-encompassing, enhancement request. And so one of the things that we did last fall was we broke out those county operational requests so that they could get a more streamlined path for those single county specific. I have a new EBT printer. I need to change a bank, those sorts of things. So they didn't end up in the whole process. And so that is one thing that's now been in place for getting close to a year. And so that was like half of the half of the CER. And then the BCR is related to kind of the other half of those types of requests.
So that's unbelievable. And I think, as a council, thank you I think that was a good change. It's kind of move ahead with what they needed.
Yeah, those gave me visibility right away, so.
Right. Yeah. We also have this other structure, which is our house laws committees. And so how does the committees fit into this?
Would you like me to
You
answer?
want me to start or do you want to start?
I can tell you, we don't do everything through work groups today. We reserve work groups for those targeted, time-limited, specific topics. And so committees still form the backbone of a lot of the reviews, inputs, approval process for designs. And we also, at those meetings, include the updates for what's been going on. So they get status updates and provide feedback at those meetings as well.
So all the work group activity still gets presented to sometimes multiple committees because one work group could actually split into different committees. So it's always kind of that feedback loop on that. Sure.
And the work groups, the other advantage with some of these work groups is that we can, just as Julie mentioned, we can pull people together from various areas instead of trying to smush 3 committees into one ginormous group. We can say we need some fiscal people, we need some reports people, and we need some eligibility, let's say, and that becomes the work group. So we cross over the areas without having to, have 200 people in a meeting. So it's worked well.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think this process we're talking about here is so critical to the sort of ongoing management operations of benefits Scout or Charles Loss and then Scout. Because, we talk about the big level changes here in these meetings, and there's constant changes out all the time. So let me see if I can summarize this kind of where we are right now. So it seems like where we are right now is we've got our good old committees that have been around forever. They're still operating. And then we've got HR1 committees, which we implemented with an urgent need to address HR1 specifically. And some of those have even rounded back into the committees. And then this idea about sort of change requests, CRs, is a little bit open right now. We haven't kind of settled that working process there. And we've been putting so much effort into HR1. And start playing. Okay. Got it. Okay. That's really I really appreciate the clarity here. Open it up now to other board members for questions and input and comments here.
And we would be assuming that the BCR process will incorporate going to a committee, right, whichever applicable
Yeah,
committee.
The point at which it's, as it looks like today, in our structure, at the point at which it's prioritized, then we get the real experts involved in the design and all of that.
So you may not be able to answer this or not, but I'm just like wondering, go to the left at the box, business case review. And then over to the right-hand column, JPA consent. How long do you think it takes if the process worked as it should to go from that box to the JPA consent?
I think we tested out different cadences, it's really we want feedback from the county. So the original envision was that was what, a 60-day? And I'm not mistaken, Karen's fault. 60-day timeframe of like when it's finalized with that group, and then it'll go to the PSC, and the PSC would have like 60-day review period where they could actually review and ask questions and things like that. The first column in terms of how long it takes them to develop the business cases, it's really not for the project to dictate on that.
Right, that's why I'm starting at the second box.
Yeah, the second box is like 60. Once it's finished and it goes to the PSC, the PSC has a 60-day review cycle before it comes to the actual PSC meeting for a discussion. But again, these were like our estimates, and it was always like we've continued to communicate. It's really up to the counties, and really the PSC at that point, and that timeframe is also given. But
Are there expectations
in terms of what?
of timeline? I guess where I'm getting at is this, it's a very nice process that has like face validity. I'm just wondering in its like bureaucratic kind of niceness, are things actually going to make it all the way through in a timely manner?
Yeah.
Such that we can still maintain nimbleness in this highly evolving environment?
Yeah. Well, if you look at the top box, it says 60-day review cycle. So there is a it's time bound for sure. Is that answer your question, Roderick, or what's the?
Well, then there's 60-day. I mean, so are we thinking like 120 days, 180 days to work it's all the way through, or?
I think what we're talking about after the 60 days, prioritization has been set. After the prioritization, when it actually would be, implemented, basically, right?
Yeah.
And that depends on what's on the pipe, right?
So this doesn't determine how quickly things go out to release.
No, I understand that. That's why I'm stopping at JPA consent.
Yeah.
Getting to the point, we're going from the base where the business case review is done. That means the development, the regional managers have worked with the counties and they've developed it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's entering the process and it's going all the way through the point where the JPA gets consent and says, yes, go for it. Understand development, depending on the project, is very variable. Yeah. I'm curious what you're thinking, best case scenario would be.
Okay, so say that in March, you go to the PSC, let's go to the JPA, because the JPA is not the one that actually approved that prior date, and it's a private committee. So they get sent to the PSC. The PSC has their 60 days later, it's brought to the PSC, the meeting. And that is actually where they do the discussion, reviewing the business cases, and the voting. After that, the JPA, and the JPA the PSC has determined that these are the prioritizations of these items. The JPA can say, you know what, we actually think the one that's number 3, it should be, that's at the discretion of the JPA. But it all starts with the PSC. And then it moves past that point, and that was the other slide, moving into activating the research and ideation phase. So that's 60 days before it hits the PSC, 90 days before it goes to the JPA.
I'll follow up here maybe. What's a recent example of something that's come to the JPA for prioritization that's gone through this process? Maybe a real example could help us.
Yeah.
Haven't done any.
We haven't because
Other than the HR1, which kind of bypassed everything.
okay, so we internally kind of did this because we went through the policy and we said, we talked to the counties, we talked to the state, here are the 5 things. So kind of push this, we had to move through this, there was no ask, there were mandates, right? And so we said, if you remember back in August, I said, here's the 5. And the board said yes. And then we activated those work groups immediately out of that. The CRFIs went out and we brought people together. So we have seen that right side. So that's why I want to That's why I started there. We have seen the right side after the JPA, deactivated and turned into work. What's outstanding is the left side we haven't done because we haven't gotten any approval and we haven't finalized if this part of the process needs to change.
So what's the next step here for getting this approved as a process and kind of getting back into it?
Yeah,
I think HR1, we kind of adapted to, kind of know what we need to do, and how we're going to get back to this process.
yeah, I think one, we wanted to just bring it back and give the context again. And I think that what we would expect is as we're having conversations and not just with the board, but the other, our PTOCs and our regional meetings, we'll probably be getting feedback and, from this, but this is ultimately the boards to approve. But we'll be communicating in those forums about this and bringing it back. We wanted to bring it back here first. Initial reaction, and then we'll be communicating to our regional meetings on this, getting some feedback from our county directors.
Okay, so it sounds like this, I think this is great. Shopping it here is a great idea. I'm gonna continue to shop it to our other groups. Sounds like the way it needs to come back to us is a handbook revision. Right? Can we talk about a possible date for that? Like, do we need another 2 months here, or how much longer do you think we need? After the calendar?
I'm like, David, do you get any sleep? So once it's updated feedback, which we also have a board change too, so we want to make sure we get the new board a chance to chime in on this. So we're thinking probably September is when it would come back to. I have that calendar in front of me. Yolanda, Henry, and the ones who are all part of this. I think September was on that timeline and when we would bring it back. Is that okay with you?
That's certainly.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, I understand the formality of accepting that prioritization life cycle and having to put in your handbook and all that. In the meanwhile, and what is happening with the request? Because it just seems like a logical, what you describe and what you've written is kind of a logical progression. We're identifying the issue, the RMs write it up, it gets developed, and it gets prioritized, and it eventually gets implemented. So right now, I'm assuming whatever letters we're calling it.
Yeah, we certainly have no lack of work,
Yeah.
no lack of priorities that need to go out there. These are really a little bit more like strategic in nature. So we need a plan for them. Sometimes that requires extra funding or whatever, like we need to get to that point for those. In the meantime, we still are utilizing the CER process for enhancements. We still have a lot of policy coming through. Also we have a lot of just system operational. Our keeping the lights on every day is actually a significant part of our budget as well. So the machine that we use today continues to operate, and as items are brought forward or something didn't make it all the way through the design process, let's say we need to make a change there to the design and upgrade it. As we continue to move forward, we will continue to do all those things to bring the best that we can to the counties. Especially focusing still for a while on HR1, because while and on the ABOD side, we have a lot of things going in, but Medi-Cal in a lot of respects is just getting started, right? So Medi-Cal is going to extend for a couple more years of SERs that'll go through for that part of the process. But we will, in the meantime, continue to work with, we had a lot of priorities that were sitting out there for, the committees previously had prioritized, and, where we continue to try and fit those in, we can as well. Because some of those are not very big. We just try and fit them in wherever we can.
Yeah. It just seems like a reclassification of labels, but the process doesn't seem all that different than what we've been doing and have been doing. And it's just formalizing it. And so when we talk about September, it's not really going to be a game changer that we're going to feel something different. We maybe call it something different, use a different form or whatever, but the process
Still continues. Yep.
Just a couple of additional questions. I know this slide is for illustrative purposes, right? But if we go to the right-hand column, the second and third slide from the top, it says regional representatives. Is that the same as the regional managers, or is that something different?
No, so they're depending on the topic. they may have an individual who's a subject matter expert that they, like the PhD member may not feel comfortable like presenting on that, so they'll bring kind of phone friend and bring that person in. So that's why it's saying a representative, so it's not necessarily someone who has a designated title.
Title, okay, good, thank you. And then members. On the third slide from the top. In other places, it talks about, PSC members or comms team members or regional manager, like who are these members? in
Yes, PSC.
PSC.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But being consistent on the labeling is an important point.
Any other comments from board members in the room? Questions or comments?
Will these meetings be held according to the regular meeting schedule, or will special meetings be held to handle this stuff?
Yeah, this will be in our regular meetings. Yeah.
So the PSC, the regional managers, when they meet, these will be integrated into their regular meeting schedule.
Yeah.
The board members on Zoom that want to jump in here. I do see that there's one comment in the chat, and Jen, can you help me? Is this a board member or? It's a public comment, yeah. So before I go to public comments, any members, any board members in Zoom? I'm not seeing any. So let's go to public comment now then, and then I'll do kind of summary wrap up here. So public comment, we do have one comment in the chat right now, which is how do the work groups into this prioritization life cycle process?
So work groups actually do the work of designing, assisting with the design. The work groups are not prioritization bodies. They participate in the actual design.
Yeah, if you click back to slide 25, the work groups are the ones that are doing all this work, like the requirements development, helping us design and figuring out what needs to be done. And not when it needs to be done, but just the what of what needs to be, what needs to be done.
So there's kind of a unique work group for any individual change that's being worked on.
Not everyone. Ones that just are, have a scope that seems, big enough for that. We still run a lot of changes through the committees themselves.
That's like the error rate one, that's a big, a lot through like these industry tools that have a whole roadmap attached to those individuals. Or workload management, I mean, that was.
So I think on slide 27, that'll be helpful to have somehow on slide 27 represent where the work groups are in the area. Okay, I'm going to go now to public comment. Any public comment on this item? So hearing now, let me do a summary here. This is a very important topic for us on how we operate. So here's what I heard in this discussion. Okay, I have numbers on here and I can't see number one. All right, number two. I numbered this for myself. So come back in September with kind of a final for us to vote on. In the meantime, changes will be made to the handbook. So we'll come back with the handbook and you'll shop it through all other levels before it comes back to us. In the meantime, number three, we're not going to stop and wait for anything. Our regular processes continue. When it does come back, one thing I've heard is on this page, it'd be helpful to have time, sort of projected timelines all along. So that third column has timelines, but if we can get timelines in the first two columns. And you probably have some other notes on.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Good conversation. Thank you, everybody. Let's move now to agenda item number 9, which is our HR1 update, and starting here with Roger. And go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here. We'll start off with our CalSOLS CalFresh HR1 work group updates, specifically 2 work groups that were focused on enhancements to the system. This is our CalFresh processing work group and our ABOT enhancement work group. Both these work groups have concluded their requirements gathering, and the project has assessed those enhancements and aligned them to targeted release dates. In prior JPA meetings, we've reviewed these enhancements. We've discussed their targeted release timelines. Now, for ease of tracking, what we've done here is we've consolidated those system enhancements into one timeline slide here. At this time, these enhancements remain on track with the previous communicated release timelines. We have system changes going in as soon as Monday with our 2605 baseline release, and then they're scheduled for all of the subsequent releases going all the way through the end of this year. For Monday's release, the item that is going in is the Nudge and Automated System Review Framework. This focuses on real-time system validation and alerts to workers of potential errors. So this is setting up that nudges to get feedback from the counties and the work groups. So as we look at future enhancements, we're incorporating that feedback and making sure that we are accounting for the county's needs. At this point, the team continues on designing these SERs, and we will keep this slide current as we progress through implementation of these items. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Sharon, who's going to provide us an update on the HR1 work groups.
Okay, good afternoon. So for the Medi-Cal HR1 work group, and that is as a reminder for work requirements, community engagement, as well as 6-month redeterminations. So we've been working together with the counties, DHCS, CWDA on designing this functionality. And for work requirements and community engagement, we're pretty close to completing that design. And in parallel, we've been working on the 6-month redetermination. Next slide. This is just one slide, just to let you all know that for the Medi-Cal work requirements and community engagement, there are exemptions, and there are different types of exemptions that are defined in HR1, and this kind of groups some of them into like data collection, medical or and hardships, and then some county-wide exemptions. Okay, next slide. As Holly had discussed earlier, here are the Medi-Cal HR1 and VLP risks. So for the HR1 risk, as you all are aware, we are waiting for CMS guidance in June. And so we've been working on both of these risks in partnership with DHCS. And so for risk 326, and that's the HR1 risk, and the lack of timely policy guidance may impact Medi-Cal HR1 delivery schedule. This is a medium risk, and the current status is that we are on track. There have been some delays in the design. This is new functionality. It's complex. But the end state of when we're going to deliver the completion of development and test is still on track. And this risk is not just a CalSAWS risk. It also includes Benefits Cal. So risk 333, back in February of this year, CMS, for a very lawful presence, they provided all of us an update to the VLP system to support their HR1 QNC definition. And so what we did do is we logged a risk for this one because it was very late, in the cycle, development cycle to incorporate this. But we've worked with DHCS and CalHERS, and this is going to go into the 2609 release. And in addition, because of the CMS change, what we did add is a 2609 SCR that's related to QNC, and that's 300239. What it is some additional information that's coming out of VLP is getting passed over to CalSAWS from CalHERS and will be displayed on the CalSAWS screens. Okay, next slide. So now I'll pass it over to Fred, who'll be briefing the Benefits Cal.
Good afternoon, everyone. Frederick Gaines here, Benefits Cal Director. I'm going to talk about the four work groups that we had going on the Benefits Cal side that were focused on the advocate groups. So the things to note about this is that three of our work groups have completed, and the final one, the Medi-Cal work group, is in flight, where we have the requirements already bundled and sent out for prioritization and sent across the aisle to the CalSOS core. So, but for the processing, the CalFresh processing work group, that one completed. The Truve work group, we've completed that one, and we're on schedule for our phase 1 approach to the Truve application flow, moving through Benefits Cal to the CalSOS system. For our ABOD work group, that one has completed as well, and we did implement our ABOD functionality last month at the end of the month. And then, like I mentioned, the Medi-Cal work group finalized all of it, requirements gathering, and then those requirements were sent to the Medi-Cal committee earlier this week. Next slide. So this slide is just a representation of the SCRs that we have, or the CSPMs for the Benefits Cal items. And you can see where the bold is, they've been released. And then we're on track for our true implementation of the 2607 release. And then across the way, we are on track for the other Medi-Cal items, tracking along with the CalSOS core side, as Sharon mentioned earlier. Back to you, Marla.
Thank you. Great update. Thank you. You know, HR1 really hit us hard, and this is a great presentation right here to show how we've been able to respond. I personally would still love to see an AVOD exemption page that's a single page, and I hope that we do get there. But I do know we're going live with many, you know, most of what we need for AVOD, and I think we're really well prepared for Medi-Cal. You know, we've really stepped up and gotten there, so I want to thank you for that. I think, you know, we're making great progress here. I also really do appreciate the CalGIFs collaboration. I think that's great. And then as I was looking through the agenda items for today, I took a look at the work that our advocates have done with us on the Benefits Cal side. And there was so much great feedback from the advocates on Benefits Cal to get all of those prompts for the customers and accurate. So just want to say a shout out and thank you to our advocates that might be here today. So I think this is great progress. I appreciate it. Other comments from my peers? Thank you. Kristen, go ahead.
Hi, so I wanted to take us back to Sharon's update where we were talking about slide 32 about CalHERS determines if the exemptions are met. Can you walk us through a little bit more about what that means for like the medical provider community, how that would actually work? Like if you're in a clinic, are you going to like load into CalSOS somehow the exemption request? Could you walk us through what any of those interfaces for exemptions are, even if they're not done, but being brainstormed in terms of having information automatically come over from the medical provider community for those exemptions without the need to necessarily touch the information itself, but have like interfaces of sorts into CalSOS?
Okay, let me just go through one brief example. So if an individual applies and they are, you know, required to do work requirements or community engagement, and if they self-attest or that they have a medical condition, okay, that information will go over to CalHERS. CalHERS has an interface to a DHCS file. That DHCS file has various forms of information that could include some MCP information, and so CalHERS will check in that file, and if there's an electronic verification, then it would come back from CalHERS that that exemption has been met. You know, there's like a lot of exemptions, a lot of things. So, you know, for CalHERS, they're going to be using the DHCS file, you know, for those exemptions. There's a lot also, you know, currently in the design that in like, for example, pregnancy is used by both, you know, throughout for the individual, no matter what program you're on. And so that information will just come naturally out of data collection and get sent over to CalHERS, and that would exempt an individual. There's other ones that a worker or an individual can, you know, self-attest to, and the county worker can verify that, and that would go over as self-attested and verified over to CalHERS. And, you know, and currently that would consider them exempted. You know, as I said, we are still waiting for final CMS guidance, you know, but that's kind of where it stands right now. So hopefully that answers your question, Kristen.
Yeah, I think it does right now. As we continue to progress, I really want to be educated about like what the consumer is going to view when it comes on the, so now I'm kind of switching gears a little bit on the benefits Cal side of the house. I really want to have a good understanding. And so maybe in a future presentation, as things become more clear, what the customer is going to experience on the benefit side when it comes to, on the benefits Cal side, excuse me, when it comes to uploading their documentation for meeting the engagement requirements, like what that experience is going to look like, and then how, of course, it flows on the back end to the tasks for us. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Kristen. Any other comments or questions by board members? Any comments by the public? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much, Julia, for my company. Barbara's there. Moving on now to item 10, which is call summarization update, handing it over to Dawn.
Yeah, I think Robert's going to kick us off at time.
Good afternoon, Robert Lusk, Chief Information Officer. We continue to roll out call summarization. As of right now, we've completed the pilot last week, which I'll elaborate on later. We're going to continue to roll out in 4 different groups. In those groups, we will deploy in 2-week sprints. Those sprints will only have a few counties, so we can ensure that we have proper hypercare support and we can support each county with their needs, with the rollout, so that we're successful and we have as little impact as possible during that process. Details for those individual counties are both in the slide deck, as well as can be obtained by our RMs if needed, and there's further questions. The Group 1 kickoff meetings are complete, and that includes the first sprint with Contra Costa and with Orange, whose migration is currently scheduled for July 10th through August 21st. Details for the additional kickoff meetings for both the groups, the sprints, and the counties in those are in the slide deck and can also be obtained through the RMs. So for now, I'm going to turn over to Dawn for details on next steps.
Sure. So a little bit more on the next slide around that first bar, which was the pilot preparation and doing the pilot. This really just kind of talks through some of the things that we did, which was, as you all remember, we did a full technical review of this and had done some changes to make this more maintainable and more configurable. Those were accomplished in coordination with our AWS partner, and a number of changes were made to accomplish those goals. And you can see that we then did go to pilot. The pilot actually started in April, but we started prepping with Placer in January. This slide at the time was in progress, but as Robert just noted, it is complete. And then, of course, we are moving on towards our group rollouts next. So if we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about the statistics coming out of pilot. Now, this slide is a bit dated in terms of this was what was available at the time it was created. I do have the updated numbers. So the numbers I'm about to talk about are going to change a little from what you see on the screen, but I wanted to give you what the end result of the pilot is. So from the pilot, they did launch over 5,000 summaries that were launched. The ending average generation time was 4 seconds. So from the time that they requested the summarization and finished the call, 4 seconds was the average for the summary to appear on the screen. All of them appeared on the screen in less than 60 seconds. 82.4%, here it was 82.5, but 82.4% of them at the end of the pilot was the amount of content that was not edited. So that was accepted as generated. And the reduction that we saw in the wrap time, which is that ACW, bounces around a little bit as we get more of a full load on it. Obviously, we need enough sample size for it to settle down. So it had been bouncing around in the 3 to 4-ish range for a while. Now that we're over 5,000, we are up to 4.45% is the average wrap time reduction. So that's the time after the call. And then that reduction in AHT, that's the entire length of the call. So you don't expect call summarization to necessarily cut out a big part of the call is talking to people. Here it was 1.43 in the middle of the pilot. By the end of the pilot, we had achieved 3.69%. So those numbers are available. And I am going to ask Jamie Sweeney with Placer to just give us a minute or two on what their experience was like, rather than you just hearing it from me. So Jamie, if you are out there, I would ask you to join us and give us a little background on your experience.
I am here. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, no, the experience was actually fantastic. I know I've said this in other meetings. So we're at about the 2-month mark from our go live. And we've had the transition has been relatively seamless. There have been a few little things that we're still working through, but the team was great. They offered a ton of support for us initially, continued to provide us with statistics. So the statistics you were just going over, Don, I was looking at them myself at the same time. So Chris has been great. The whole team has been fantastic. Again, they were willing to stay late, answer calls, work with the staff who were having some issues initially through UAT get in. They worked with us. We've sent over some not perfect things, right? So not understanding like Roseville, calling it Rockwell, things like that. But the team's been fantastic as far as building our, building that on the back end to make sure that the system can catch that. Again, we're about at the 2-month mark. The staff has been having a great time with some of the things that it catches and the funny little things we see. But for the most part, the edits are minimal and just our staff at large. So even those outside of the call center are really appreciating the journal entries that are being established through the use of the AI. So again, like I said, we're at about 2-month mark and transition was pretty seamless. Most of the staff love it. Those that don't, it's mostly just about editing. I'm not a proofreader, but that's not taking them a bunch of time. Like I said, we're definitely starting to see a reduction in some of the errors. The system still does make some assumptions. It had one the other day, it said a gentleman was pregnant. So funny things like that, but we're just having to make those corrections. But it's been fantastic, and the team was wonderful as we transitioned through. So nothing but positive things from those of us over at Placer.
Thank you, Jamie. So if we can go on, we'll move past the pilot since they are now in ongoing operations. And we'll talk a little bit about what does this look like for everyone else as we roll. So this slide talks about what are the activities that we do prior to the go live for each of the counties. That kickoff meeting that Robert referenced, we do go through gathering up those configurable items. And you heard Jamie talk about some of those, like Roseville versus Rockland. What that means is we need to get that into the vocabulary for a particular county. And so those things we do adjust. But up front, we gather as many of them as we can think of, right? And then we move on to add them as they start to become nuisances in the production period. We can update those vocabularies. But that's what that next item is about, is getting those configurable items. Then we, as the project team, do the actual technical configuration on that. We go through all the county readiness materials, which are available as we speak. We had them available since before the pilot with Placer. Training material review, and then we do train the trainer sessions as well. So those all occur prior to the go live. On the next slide, we do talk a little bit about what are some of the activities that occur during the rollout. Obviously, counties need to complete any remaining readiness activities that are impactful prior to that rollout. We do offer on-site support if the county would like that. So for the first day or two, we can be out there on site. And then our post-implementation support through the usual hypercare process, where there's sort of a backbone that you can call or a hotline to get some assistance. And Robert already covered the fact that we are doing these in the 4 county groups, and those are staggered so that we don't have an entire group going live at the same time. Also allows us to get that on-site support for the counties who request it. On the next slide, while we don't have a currently open risk on this from the enterprise perspective, I did want to talk about the things that keep me up at night. So these are our watch items. Broken it into 2 sections, sort of the change management, non-technical things. And then the bottom box is the technical items. I'll talk about the box on the right in just a second. But the first one in this kind of a rollout that I always am concerned about, and not because the counties aren't fantastic, but just because you are very busy. So county readiness is always front of mind. You have a lot of agents out there, and those agents do have a change, right? And it's not, it's been a positive change, both in Fresno and the original goal, and this rollout with Placer. But there is change, and change is change, and that's always hard, even if it's a positive one. So we're going to talk just in just a minute. I'm going to come back to that first one because I got some county readiness things you should think about right now, even if your group is far out. And then, of course, material and session verification. So we need to make sure that the things we learned from Placer come back into our materials and they keep improving for every group, and that those items are accurate, because we do know you depend on those to be accurate in your training. On a technical perspective, at the time put this together, my biggest concern technically actually was just having the pilot be successful, but check. I don't have to worry about that one anymore. We have made that through there. And then performance was the other one we were watching closely, and you saw we were gathering the statistics on that. Because if these things don't generate fast enough, that gets very irritating. It's like watching the clock windows, right? And you get really tired of it. We needed to make sure that they came up fast enough. But we are actually pleased with the performance of the new configuration and the new architecture we're using. So I do want to take just 1 minute and go back to that county readiness topic that I just mentioned, because on the right side panel here, we have a list of things that for those counties on contact center that have opted into this process, a few things you can be working on right now, even if your group isn't group one. And that is determine if your county has an applicable AI policy. Many of you do. In some cases, it's only things rolled by the county themselves, but in others, it's anything that's being used in the counties. And so you will want to take a look at that. We have had some counties who have come with forms and questions and information that they need to get through that policy process. We have had a couple of counties now that we've worked with who have successfully gotten through that. And we are available to assist with answering technical questions if you have an AI policy and you need assistance with knowing the technology behind it. The next one is don't forget, not that you ever do, but don't forget about your meet and confers. If you have union items that you need to cover, then you'll want to get in front of those, obviously. We are obviously just a tool to assist, but you will want to make sure that you get in front of any of those conversations that you might need. And again, if there are questions and you need information from us for those communications, just come on through your RMs and let us know that. The next one is consider your testing strategy. So who do you want to actually test? Well, 2-week period ahead of the go live in which you can try this out in the testing environments. And so there's different strategies people have used, agents to actually do it. Supervisors, your POC. We do this in English and Spanish, so bilingual. But anyway, just consider who you're going to want to do testing and start to contemplate what things you might want to look at. And then last but not least, begin to determine your training and communication plan. And we do have a lot of materials available, all of which are available to your contact center POC. If you don't have a copy, the RM can get that for you. And I have a list here of some of the more popular items that are available to assist with your planning for training and communications. And that is the last thing I have to say on it. So back to you for questions.
Very much. Great report. I see Kristen has got her hand up first. Go ahead, Kristen.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I was curious about the after call. So I saw it was about the 3, and then you gave an updated number of like a little under 4% in terms of a decrease. Referencing the referencing when Fresno started, did that percentage go up? That seemed on the surface, again, I'm just watching, I don't know. It seemed a little lower than I would have anticipated. Is that something as the system becomes more familiar with the language, we watch that percentage increase, or was Fresno's ended up about the same percentage?
Fresno is slightly higher, but not significantly higher because there are still other after call wrap things that they do. So just summarizing the call isn't the only item. But we do not think that the sample size is quite big enough yet to sort of definitively say, here's where we think it's ultimately gonna land. But it'll probably be in that neighborhood.
4% reduction in time would be on a 10-minute call summary would be 40-second reduction. Is that correct?
Now you're gonna ask me to do math.
Any other comments by any other board members or questions? Coach Costa is eager to go. Also does keep me awake about the change management, but our team is, they're all excited. Okay, that completes agenda item number 10. Let's move on now to agenda item number 11, data and analytics use. And I'm turning it over to Rajesh.
Robert will kick it off.
Well,
Wait,
so
oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot public comment. Anybody have public comment on the call summarization date? Hearing and seeing none. Go.
thank you, Marlon. While I appreciate that we are involved in this every single day, I know everyone isn't. So just look back on why we're here. Last year, we identified an opportunity really to better support our residents and local leaders in improving the insights and the data that they have to inform their decision-making process. This was influenced by HR1 and everything else. So the PSE and JPA approved replacing our fairly rigid solution right now with a more robust and flexible analytics solution to drive us into the future. So on the details, I'll turn it over to Rajat.
Thanks, Robert. Let's go to the next slide here. All right, so we are now 90 days into us counting the days. So roughly 90 days into our project, end of this month. And so far so good. Let me kind of step through the different threads we have. On top, you see the analytics infrastructure. So we continue to collaborate with Gainwell, and those activities are proceeding well. On the middle section, the analytics platform, that is where a lot of the reporting and analytics work is being done. Intake was our first module, and we are almost at the end of completion of that module, and we'll get into the details on the subsequent slide. One of the questions asked in the last JP meeting was, when will the counties will get to see the actual report coming out of this design? If I look at the intake module, we are targeting that sometimes around late July. So we'll have a period of like good 4-6 weeks from late July to mid to late August. We'll get the feedback and then we'll do another round. So, and that's the cycle we'll continue with other modules. So as we wrap up the intake module, we are now focused on pre-work for continuing eligibility. And those designs will start in early June timeframe. And again, the module will follow exactly the similar cycle. We'll go through the design, we'll get the feedback, we'll get the design approved, and then we'll share with counties the reports from that module. And we'll follow the exact same cycle for case characteristics and productivity. In parallel, we have a lot of technical activities like system test validations, performance, those threads. We are in the planning phase right now. We understand the change management will be a big aspect. This is something counties are used to doing reporting certain fashion. This is a fundamental change to how we access data, how we modify data, how we look at data. So that is something we understand will be a big change. Adoption of this change will be, a big effort. So a lot of the pre-work on that front is on the way. Let's go to the next slide. So on this slide, last month, open action item was who's the executive sponsor or how do we get the input into executive dashboards and reporting. And we do have now Lynn Perez, who's here. She is the executive sponsor. So we'll continue to work with her in terms of executive reporting. It's the same set of data. It's how you kind of curate that data and produce the dashboards will be different based on personas. But at this point, we have the representation for all the 5 personas. I can tell you that in the last 6 or 7 weeks, every single session we have done, we had 100+ representatives. We've been getting good engagement from counties, good feedback. And I would say, so far so good on this front. Let's go to the next slide. So yeah, good.
If there's both that you all want, please let for Josh's team, but thank you, Len, for, I know it's a huge ask to have you reviewing it, but if you all want to add some additional folks.
Thank you, appreciate that. Thank you, Lynn, for starting in this position. Appreciate it.
Next. So this is again how we are doing this work. So on the left-hand side, you see we have a 2-week sprints. We've been running this. At the start of the sprint on Friday, we submit the design documents. In the subsequent week on Wednesday, we do the work group sessions. We gather the feedback from the work group, and then we go into the regional SME session, which again is done by region. So we've been doing 6 sessions by region. We gather that feedback and then we submit the document for approval. So that's the way we've been operating. On the right-hand side, early on, risk was logged. Given the HR1 priorities, will the counties have enough time to focus on the analytics project? I can say that so far, this risk is trending low. As I mentioned, we've been getting good participation. We'll continue to monitor this as we go into our subsequent phases. We have some complex and harder stuff coming down the pike. So we'll monitor, but as of right now, there is not a big concern on this front. If it becomes, then we'll bring this to the board. Let's go to the next slide. So this was our first module, intake module, and we had like 3 sprints. So the sprint 1 was pending applications. Design has been fully approved by counties. So that's good news on that front. Sprint 2, which is the application processing statistics and ICT intercounty transfer. Design has been reviewed by work group. We did get the feedback from SMEs, and now we are in the process of incorporating that feedback, and then we'll submit the final document. And then sprint 3, which is the application characteristics, e-tool intake, and the CWS intake. The design, the analytics workgroup sessions were conducted, the SPE sessions have been completed, and now we are in the process. So we expect, by early June, this module completely behind us with all the approvals necessary. Let's go to the next slide. So we added the slide. There were multiple action items coming out of last few JPA sessions. The first one was, in fact, this came from the last JPA. While we had a fiscal module and we were planning to bring fiscal SMEs to that module, the request was, well, they have their input even in the early modules like intake and continuing eligibility, so we need to add them. So that action is complete and the SMEs have been now added to those workgroups. The second was, which already Julia mentioned, on the executive sponsor. So, we have Len, but if there are other directors need to be involved, please let us know and we'll work with them. 3 and 4 are a bit duplicative, which I did cover early on, like when will the counties get to see the actual reports? Right now, it's all, on a piece of paper. So based on the module, the earliest would be intake around July timeframe. And the last item was the coordination and collaboration with WDA. So that is something we'll handle later when we start our OCM and training activities. With that, I believe this is the last slide. So in summary, again, 90 days into the project, off to a good start. We still have a lot more harder pieces to come, but I'm excited. I think this is good so far. Back to you, Marla.
Thank you. Very responsive report. Thank you. Appreciate all the action items based on last month. Thank you. And thank you again, Dawn, for stepping into this position. Comments or questions from my board colleagues? Hearing and seeing none, any public comment? Hearing and seeing none. Move on now to item number 12, identity access management update, and
more on why we're here. So what is identity access management? It's how we ensure the right people have access to the right systems at the right time for the right reason. Now, our current provider decided to make a strategic shift, and that strategic shift would force us to move to an entirely new platform. We took this as an opportunity to say, is this the right thing for us? Is this going to provide the best benefit to everyone that we serve? Taking that step back and after review, we decided to improve performance and make sure we're looking at a more cloud native solution. We decided to go with Okta, and we've been working through that process on how we're going to deliver. And I'm going to turn over to Dawn to go through the details.
And I know you've seen this part before, but again, we were in the mobilization stage last time we talked, where we were planning and starting our discovery sessions and moving through that. We have moved into that second pillar there, the architecture security platform builds, and we're also in design from a user journey perspective. So that's where we are at. But I think the big question you asked last time was what do and you can go to the next slide, what do the migration waves look like? And again, note the word draft up there in the subtitle, because we are still, as we go through design, working through making sure we get the risk as best we can out of this particular deployment. So in the May to July timeframe, which is where we are right now, we are working on standing things up to be getting into that development environment. So this does not affect anyone in production. This is us getting ready to actually be able to move this through our lower or non-production environments and get ready for testing, right? In wave one, again, still in non-production, so not affecting accounting. We have some tools going in. Those tools include Jira. There's a little note down there that's hard to read. Jira, LMS, and ServiceNow. And there's a few other ancillary tools as well. But again, non-production. So we're still not in the zone of affecting any actual end users in a production way. In that next wave, wave two that we're calling it, we're moving the Benefits Cal and CalSAWS both into a higher environment, but still not production. So this is us moving it through our testing and deployment activities. And wave three in that October 2026 timeframe is the first time we're actually going to touch anything that is production related. And that is the tools. So again, still not CalSAWS Core, still not Benefits Cal. These are the tools like Jira, ServiceNow, LMS, and that will allow us to make sure that all the county verification and authentication actually works and that your users are appropriately being served by the Okta solution on those tools. So wave four, right now, we do have slated CalSAWS production and then wave five Benefits Cal production, and you can see the dates there. However, again, this is draft, and I will note that there is some conversation going on during design as to whether, in fact, both of these should go together in wave five. So that is still under conversation. And I know there's wow, everything all at once. That seems concerning. And either option has ups and downsides. Either option has, risks, and we are working to really evaluate those. So just as an example, there's a lot of integration, as you know, between Benefits Cal and CalSAWS. So there is a solution which would allow us to split them up, but that introduces some technical risk, right? In terms of making sure that the intricacies of doing that are all done absolutely correctly. The other approach is we can eliminate that risk, put them together, but when we do that, we have a larger population we're affecting at the same time, right? So if we go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the risks. The main risk here, which is 338, which was on Holly's list she talked about before. And we really are, in making this decision, trying to focus on that risk being that we have to be sure that the user journey are all identified correctly, implemented correctly, tested correctly, and how do we get the risk out of that process? That is our focus right now as we're finalizing on that last wave decision. And you can see that obviously if we don't get this right, the outcome of that could be user impact, which we do not want to have as they are logging into these systems. And you can see some of the mitigations listed there. Detailed project plan across our vendor partners working through this. We have had all the vendor partners engaged in the discovery sessions, along with our Okta provider, who has done a lot of ForgeRock Ping identity transitions to Okta. We are extending that testing period because as you saw, we're moving core CalSAWS and benefits Cal into our testing cycle early. So we're trying to get as much testing time as we can. And then the big one is what is the rollback plan in any scenario of migration that we do? Because obviously we need to be able to undo if we have to. Nobody goes into it planning to do that, but it is important in this case that we know exactly the steps we would need to back out if we needed to do so. So that's as it's related to the risk. Other things we're watching, as you can imagine, there's a whole bunch of things that we're thinking about. But in the change management area, I did want to highlight the fact that the delegated admins will be using a different interface and front end. And so there will be training for them. So they will need to go through a training process at which we will cover with them to make sure that the changes involved in how they do their job are fully known. But there will be an impact to your delegated admins, not to what they do, but the screens they do it on, right? The next one is making sure everyone's aware of the upcoming change, and we are very focused on determining, do we have any other change to an end user besides the delegated admins, which we know we do. At this moment, we are not seeing a change to the general public, but we are keeping a really close eye on that. That's why that's on the watch item list here. And then technically, we do have a workflow license that we need to make sure that we get brought in quickly, and we've escalated that to Okta management, and that is well underway to being resolved at this point. And then the other thing in the technical area is test it, and test it again. And we will be working with the counties to talk through how do we engage you all in the testing, A, and then B, on the cutover weekend. We are talking through some more innovative ideas in terms of when we go live. So because for Benefits Cal technically could go live on a Sunday, for example, right? We are talking through some more innovative ways of how we do that when workload is lower, right? So again, none of that, we're in design, none of that fully fleshed out yet. But those are the things that we're really watching closely in terms of making sure that we get these items covered, including that testing, and that we get all the users involved in that testing. Because again, while we are not anticipating changes for the public, or many changes for the counties either, other than the delegated admins, we need to make sure that all the plumbing lines up correctly so that those user journeys execute properly. And with that, I think I'm back to you all for questions.
Thank you very much. I feel like I need to channel Michael and ask some very complicated questions. We can't do on this topic. I really appreciate the attention to this because this is our customer's identity that we're protecting here. So super important. Questions or comments by my colleagues? Hearing none. Questions, public comment? Any public comment on this item? Okay, hearing none. That is the end of that item. Thank you very much, Dawn and Robert. Okay, next item we are moving on to is an overview of the Oracle infrastructure update, and back to Don Rowe.
Yep. Looking back on why we're here. Currently, our core database for CalSAWS runs on Oracle within AWS. We're getting to the point because of our size, and we want to make sure that we have the performance we need and the ability to scale. So what we've chosen to do is move to a dedicated hardware platform by Oracle that actually lives within the AWS data centers. And AWS and Oracle have partnered on this to improve capacity, to improve resilience, while at the same time helping us with cost avoidance, flexibility, and ability to scale. So I'm going to turn over to Dawn for our deployment plan, our progress, and any risks that we can talk about.
Yeah, so this one, I know we've talked about it before, so I'll just kind of skim it here quickly. The little dot tells you we are here, we are completing environment stand-up, and we are moving forward into the non-production and bringing these into the actual release cycle, if you will. So if we go to the next slide, Just a reminder on the fact that we've been doing a lot of testing and tuning in that phase that we're in right now. We actually are going to do one more because we do have another idea for even improving the performance beyond where it is today. We are going to do another test actually next week to see if we can make it even better. But at this point, we don't have any signs or signals that this is not going to be effective and not going to move forward. But just a quick reminder on all the testing we have done. So I want to go ahead and get to that last slide, which is the new piece here, which is the actual risk. So again, Holly mentioned that this risk was a part of the ones that she discussed earlier that was going to be here. Again, this is risk 336, and this is really about, again, if we do not test this, we don't have performance, we don't have it operating correctly. Obviously, look at system outage is the potential outcome here, which is why there's a risk here. The mitigation actions are very similar to the ones I went through before. The project plan, working with our M&E partner here to make sure we do all the performance testing, getting the exit data into a full release cycle before we go to production. And then, of course, as we talked about before, backup plan to make sure that we can roll back if we need to. On the watch item area, on the left side of this, again, in that change management, non-technical area, this is really about awareness. It should not be noticeable to the counties, right? If we do this correctly, you should not know what server you're running on, right? And then environmental constraints is always a concern. There are so many moving parts in CalSAWS that to keep it all coordinated and in sync is another thing we're watching. The first technical item on encryption keys, AWS and Oracle needed to work this out amongst themselves. They expected to deliver this in June. We do need it to be able to go to production. However, this one's ended. They both actually delivered early in May. So the first one's gone. And the last one we already talked about, which is, performance and connectivity, always on our mind when we're doing this kind of an infrastructure change. And so those are the big things we're really watching in this one. But the expectation is no impact to the counties because, again, you shouldn't care what server you're running on. Back to you.
Thank you. A question I have is, so I'm assuming obviously this is distributed storage. Are the servers on AWS, they belong to, they're us only?
Yeah.
And we're the only application?
Yeah, dedicated servers for both production, non-production, and disaster recovery over in the East region.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other questions, comments from my peers?
Just one, just looking at the last two projects and seeing that they're, rolling out kind of into production close to the same time. Also at the same time that CARES is supposed to be rolling out and the systems do interface, but I don't know if that's been a consideration in thinking things through about everything kind of hitting all at once.
Yeah, we actually did take a look at the timing and we are working really hard to get the Oracle database one through ahead of all of that. And because that one really is farthest along by far and not the least likely to have an impact actually, other than a positive one, we believe. But yeah, there's no slowing down what's going on at CalSAWS, right? So we spend a great deal of time actually working with the M&E partner to figure out where do we slot it in the environments, where do we slot it in the releases, where do we slot it in the testing, and it is a big coordination effort.
Okay, thank you.
If you notice that identity access management after, right? So we have October here and November probably closer to so we always
Right, but I mean, these are projected timelines and we all know stuff happens, so.
Thank you. Good question. Other questions or comments from my peers, either in the room or? Not seeing any, so I'll open it now for public comment. Seeing public comment either. So thank you very much, Donna, for that. Moving now to item 14, workload management overview. Jerry.
Thank you. So as we get started on the update here, I'll remind everyone of kind of how we got here. This has been a 2-year journey so far. We started with getting requirements together, determining what the scope of the effort would be. At the end of last year, we went through and did the detailed design, the functional design pieces, and began the build activities. And now we're mere days away from the rollout of phase 1. So we're all pretty excited about this and looking forward to next week when it is out in production. Slide. So this is a good timeline to see. There's a lot of gray on here, which means we've already passed and completed this. We are here in May with the go live on Monday. Some activities that will be happening post go live, the key one being the post implementation office hours. So as this new functionality is exercised in production, if there are questions, issues, we have a dedicated forum to go and raise those and address them quickly. And we can go to the last slide. As a reminder, one of the key OCM activities that we had leading up to this in April were the facilitated demonstration, categorized by 3 groups of workers. So operations and staff, supervisors, management, and the office administration, county administration. Those sessions were completed. We had a lot of attendees. I think the information is very good and well received. And again, a reminder, the topics that were covered there addressed phase 1, which was appointment management, workload management, schedule management, kind of the overall view, my work page, the new page coming in, and then some staff administration and immigration areas. Before we wrap it up here, just as a reminder, we have phase 2 coming out in September, and we will be going through similar OCM activities and preparations for that release along with the post-implementation support. So Marla, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. And can you remind us what the phase 2 will include?
Yes, phase 2 is some additional enhanced reporting, some additional capabilities with configuring and handling tasks related to appointments, and then some additional configuration items as far as setting up appointments and some managing of workload reassignment activities. So 3 main areas.
Great, thank you. Okay, great. Thanks for another good update. I know workload management is important to all of us. Questions or comments? There's on Zoom. Okay, any comment on the side? Hearing none, we'll go to the next item, which is ROI status update, and we are on.
Yes.
Thank you. I take it. Thank you, Marla. Good afternoon, everyone. Omer Salman here, Benefits Cloud Project Manager. In the next few minutes, Lisa and I are going to provide you an update on the release of information. We are going to start with a quick refresher. How did we get here, where we are right now, and what we have in front of us? Release of information, as you may recall, is an important functionality for our customers when they can selectively select a CBO and specify the data they want to share with them for a specific date range to assist them in their benefits journey. Those data points may include their verifications, benefits information, program information, upcoming renewals, or SAR 7s. And in addition to the customers and CBO interaction, this functionality would also provide the ability for our counties to manage the release of information in the CalSOS portal as well. So to implement and actualize this functionality, it required changes in the identity and access management, the Benefits Cloud portal, as well as the CalSOS, core CalSOS system. With that objective in mind, this team started working on this implementation approach in 2022, went through design development and testing efforts with the target go live date of May 2023, based on the ACL 2337. And after those activities have been completed around the go live timeframe in spring 2023, our JPA board has determined that our additional clarifications are needed in terms of the compliance as well as the how to operationalize this functionality. Based on that determination, we took a step back and to take it back, and the consortium immediately established a work group in the summer of 2023. A series of work groups sessions have been facilitated throughout the 23 and the 24 with the participation from counties, our CWDA state partners, advocate partners, as well as vendor teams, along with the QA team. Outcome of that exercise, a new ACL has been released by our state partners, which is 2491, I believe, and along with a SCARFRA, requesting a phased implementation approach. So all the teams assessed that SCARFRA, how to address the needs based on the final policy on the SCARFRA, provide the estimates to the state. And then that SCARFRA has been going through state budget and prioritization process. While that process has been going on, we did not stop. So we had implemented series of changes on benefits call. For instance, for CBOs and the customers, we implemented additional functionality on the doc upload, edit the ROI form, so CBOs and the customers can select and upload that document in the doc center. Also, during new applications, we added a feature as a suggested document for the ROI form, so the customers can also select and upload that document too. Also, we added a new feature for CBOs where they can track referred applications through Benefiscal for application referral to provide them more visibility. So where we stand right now, as Marla and Holly shared in the beginning of the meeting, May revise has been released yesterday. Now we know the funds are secured for new state fiscal year, July onwards. I will be handing over to Lisa to share us what they have ahead of us.
I think we're going to the next slide. I'm catching a virtual ball. So full transparency here as we are in transition. If you quiz me on this slide, it might take me about 3 goes to get you all the information. So playing a little catch up myself. So as Ona said, this phased approach that you see on here was actually developed last year. It came to the board both in September and October of last year and has been reviewed with state partners. We technical note here to our friends at DHDS that they also did publish an ACWDL 2021. These were both gifts in Christmas of 2024. So the team, owner and his team led the thread and consultant to come up with this plan. Where we're at kind of right now, we understand the criticality of release of information. There's a lot of changes impacting our customers. And having information available to our community-based partners is important as we move forward. In terms of phase 1A, this is really planning as well as when we look at the existing CDOs that we have, validation, review process. So we're doing some pre-work. Let me call it pre-work. This week we've had several meetings. I know Fred and the consortium have talked to CWDA. We need to come up with the approach, who's involved in the cleanup activities, what are they, what is the review cycle. From a project perspective, this involves, multiple systems. As you heard from Anna on the first slide, it's not just Benefit Cal, it's our 4 drug doors sitting right here. I can totally feel the theory right next to me for M&E, and it's really a lot of coordination to get the information needed. So just this week, we joined that conversation. And today, Dawn's team was able to extract on 4 drug kind of that listing of CDOs. So we're starting to get a picture of what is the universe of what we need to look at. And don't quote me, I don't have numbers yet, but I know people are actually actively looking at it as we speak. So that's a pre-work activity that we've started. The other conversation we started, as Ona noted, and I did go back and listen to our JPA, you sound the same Marla from 2 years ago. This code has been dormant for 2 years. I have a desire, but it requires a plan, to turn on this code in one of our development environments, which requires coordination. It means that CalSource, Benefits Cal, Boardrop, we all need to coordinate. Do we have environments available? As you heard from Holly earlier, we are in the middle of transition, our risk 329. We need to have clear handoffs of environments because there's current key production activities that Honor and his team are doing. So we're trying to coordinate, but I'd love to get this functionality turned on, just like we did with ABOT when we put it in PRT, and see are there any surprises? Are there any unknowns that we have? Again, there have been many system changes since that code was implemented. So we need to just get a baseline of where we're at today when we turn these things back on. So again, just coordinated efforts across the systems. I also need to, and my team meet with the transition team and go through how do we turn it back on in benefit scale. That's something that we need to do a knowledge transfer on. I could sit here and tell Jerry, we already talked about how to turn it on in Emily. So again, I need to catch that. We need to catch up to make sure we have that understanding. So the path forward. What do we need to do to get you a plan? You've just seen across analytics, you saw across ForgeRock and its replacement. Okta, we need to have a plan that needs to be an integrated plan. For us to turn on this functionality, it does require all three systems to be in lockstep, that we've gone through all the appropriate testing processes. So our next steps are to have a series of meetings to talk about how and when can we get this moving forward. As you saw, there's a lot of priorities. And just having that coordinated integrated approach that we can bring back to you and overlay that with these phases that we have here. And so that is now to do with something we'll bring back to you in the future. Hopefully I didn't go too quickly, but still lots. So back to you, Marla.
Thank you very much. So really, I appreciate this update. Yeah, I have been involved in this from the beginning, and this is super important functionality. And as we come into HR1 and the work requirements, and there's just going to be many more reasons and ways that we're going to want to use this. Yeah. Okay. So thanks for the update. I know this has taken longer than many of us have wished, but there's many reasons for that. I do believe that our customers can bring the ROI form to our workers. That is active right now. It's just that's not implemented. So thank you for that update. Any comments or questions from my peers?
I'm not surprised by the length of the timeline and delay. These are always difficult, complex projects because of everybody involved. So glad it's moving forward.
Any JP members on Zoom? Okay, let me move now to public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Hi, Jen, Tracy.
Hey.
Good to see you. Go ahead.
Sorry for my voice, but I just wanted to say thanks for the overview, and we're looking forward to when we have the chance to participate in some way. Is there a timeline for when we might be meeting about this with any of the next steps?
Thank you, Jen. That's a good question. We'll take that as an action item and bring back a response at our next meeting for some point. Thank you. And I do want to say, Jen, I have been participating in this for quite a while, and the partnership with you and all advocates has been really helpful as we've gone through this. So thank you for the time that you've dedicated to this.
Thanks, Marla.
Any other public comment? Okay, that is that item, the ROA status update. Thank you very much. Now I believe we're going to item 16, which is the last item on our agenda before we adjourn. And we're right on time. Thank you, everybody. Policy and release update. Rajesh, start with you.
Yeah, so I'll cover this item. So in the March release, we are trying to automate the payment verification, which was a manual process. We attempted to automate that. So once the change was implemented in the first batch run on April 11th, we did run into an issue, and approximately 9% of the cases were impacted. I'll go into the root cause in a bit, but where we are right now is all the data has been cleaned up. The ones which we could clean up through an automated process, we did on our side. And once where we needed the county input, we worked with them and we took care of it. The batch is currently suspended. We are trying to fix the duplicate record issue, and there are a few other issues. So there are lots of key takeaways here. Could we have done better on this? Absolutely. We will take those learnings. Few I can think of as one, this was a manual process and we attempted to automate. So we should have looked at like what I call as a parallel test. Let me run in the system how it works manual and then run it through the automated process and compare the results. So that was something missed on our front, and we'll make sure we do that going forward. The other thing, we thought about is, a change of this magnitude. I mean, this is a critical functionality. Maybe even for a week, pick 1 or 2 counties and run it through the process to make sure it looks good, and then roll it out to, rest of the state. So there are key takeaways, but this is something, we could have done better, and we have some key takeaways, and we'll make sure that going forward, we take that into consideration. Back to you, Mana.
Thank you. Is that it on that policy?
That's not it. That's it. But I do want to add, just an acknowledgement.
Yeah, that's true.
Trying to pivot and fix this, that we were a little delayed in getting out. That's another lesson learned that, because the counties were already coming in and wondering what was going on. So, but we do have more. So that's it.
Okay, stay. That said, again, Jerry again. So we'll start with going over where we're pairing and inter-production simulation. What is the purpose of production simulation? It is to provide an environment in an area and a time for workers on both sides, both the CalSAW side and the CARE side, to work through real life production scenarios on real life production data and get used to how the new system is going to work. So we'll start with the timeline here. We're going to be running through the beginning of June. So June 1st happens to be a Monday, so we get the whole month. And we'll run through October, the current go live of that. And so in preparations for that, we sent out a request for users across the 58 counties to participate in the production simulation in CalSAWs. Similar activities were done with the CARE system. We are in the process of onboarding those users that responded and wanted to participate. And that involves getting them access to the environments and also other materials that they would use to support their activities. Again, the purpose of this, validate the business activities that you believe you're going to be doing when we go live, and to get to experience the new way that data is going to be transmitted between both systems and get familiar with that. And then, of course, there will be findings and questions. Make sure and log those findings and questions so that we can do the investigation and disposition of those findings before we get into production. Hopefully, we end up with a way more stable system. Get to that point. So cover the environment and data. So as I mentioned briefly, the data is production data between both CalSAWs and CARES. And so it'll be real life type of data. So they'll get to see real scenarios. There's nothing manufactured about it. The environment itself will mirror what's going to be in production as far as capabilities, size, performance, and also the code and production capabilities there. So that they can mimic the processes that they're going to have in that. And in order to do that, we are also providing all the materials that have been created to this point. We've been through several user system test phases where scenarios were developed. So those materials will be available to the CalSAWs testers to help them jumpstart kind of the activities they want to do in the production simulation. Go to the next slide. All right, the FSED risk. So as you might imagine, the risk that we're bringing here has to do with production simulation. There's been a lot of discussion and work to get us to this point to agree upon the timeline and the scope of what production simulation would be. So this risk essentially covers really that aspect of it, that there was a risk to the timing and being able to have CalSAW's participation in this production simulation effort. We went through getting the right environment set up, right agreements needed to be set up to handle production data. And so those things have been mitigated and taken care of. Some of the final steps that we have here, Today, we're getting the last of the participants on this. We have established the prod simulation support structure as we go through this activities. The onboarding begins next week, and we are still getting together all the support materials for the activity, which will be there when the activity starts. And then also leveraging some of the findings reporting process and resolution process that we had already exercised and established during the EUST phases. So we will continue to monitor this risk and develop additional mitigations if anything changes on this risk as well. So, Marla, back. Karen. Karen has a fly.
So I'm all excited to talk about my slide that basically a lot of it's already been covered by other speakers. So to call out, May we implement our ABOD policy coming up quickly. And we have a number of policy items with that. And then in June is a normal CalHERS release. It's not a release necessarily for us, but we support the CalHERS release. And so we are working with CalHERS to do those other implementation items for June. And coming in July, as Roger mentioned, we have our first ABOD enhancement coming, and looking forward to that. As well as we have the two coming. So one on the CalFresh processing and then one on the ABOD. And as we look ahead to August, which is also not a normal bi-monthly release for us, we are looking, we don't have a specific date identified yet, but looking to implement the ABOD auto exemptions in time to affect the right months for when I think it's October 1st, right? October 1st.
September continuances.
It's live. So we have a variety of things outside of our normal bi-monthly, as long as quite a lot going on in the next couple months in our normal upcoming releases. And then looking at our other slide, this is our normal slide that we have in here that talks about our normal release cycle, talking about testing and release communications. Those things have taken place. Green light was this week, and we will be deploying out over the weekend with the system updates available on Monday. And then on my last slide, we've also talked about these and some other efforts that Jerry talked about as well. We have the ABOD changes that we did and gave, sorry, not changes, but the outreach efforts that we did on May 12th. We had a webcast for those items. And then we have a number of resource updates that we've done with job aids, quick guides, which I think I saw one come out this morning, and web-based trainings. And then the workload management, as Jerry mentioned, has had a significant effort. It's huge. It's been broken down by various areas for folks to focus on. And that also has a number of resources that are coming with it as well. So we look forward to quite a lot of updates coming on Monday for 2605. It's a pretty large release, and we look forward to providing that out to the counties on Monday. And I think it's back to you, Marla.
It is. Thank you very much. A great report on all of the updates that are happening. I want to go back to FSED. Got questions on FSED. So we haven't talked about FSED too much here yet, but it is a critical. CalSTARS is a critical component to our care for kids that are in our children and family services areas. I had heard in another setting that there's CARES, and the work we do in CARES is 24/7. CalSTARS, we're not in 24/7. So FSED can bound, FSED exchanges with CalSTARS could be 24/7. And I heard some questions in another setting about whether that's working out okay, or whether there's any questions or problems with that. Wondering if you can provide an update on that.
Sure. So yes, you did hear that right. There have been discussions around that area, confirming some of the operational approaches when either system is down, right? Because we're passing transactions back. And as you mentioned, 24/7, CalSTAS usually has some regular maintenance periods on weekends. So there's definitely going to be some times when one is up and the other is down. So built into the technology, the interface, the queuing mechanism. So if a transaction fails, those transactions are not lost. And it's primarily an operational process to go and reprocess those applications. In addition to that, there could be feedback on the pages themselves, both in CalSTAS and CARES, where a transaction may fail, and it'll notify the workers, or it'll be visible to the workers that the transaction failed. And then there is an explicit retry built within the application changes. So a lot of the discussion that was going around was reconfirming that those processes were sufficient. I think there were some very good questions asked, and it was a good step to go through and reconfirm these operational processes and procedures.
That sounds good. Marital welfare workers are working 24/7. They might be sending in cares at any time. Our eligibility workers are 8 and 5. So when they get in, we just want to make sure they can see.
Absolutely.
That has come to me. Okay, great. Appreciate that.
Really to appreciate hearing about the retry, because we hear the language about it's going to fail, but you'll know it failed. You then folks think, oh, am I having to re-enter something? Am I having the idea that we can be a retry seems to indicate that the information that was inputted was there. It's just a matter of having it retried through. Right?
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct.
The word failure is just
It is. You got to be careful how we say things.
Any other comments or questions from board members? Any public comment on this item? Okay, well, at the end of our meeting, I'm just gonna have to really talk to Michael about I got us out early. Thank you for letting me meeting today.
Thank you.
It's just busy.